So this movie is kind of an end of an era of the Fox X-Men movies that started back in 2000. Kind of like Endgame was the ending of an era for the MCU. So Marquez, is this as good as Endgame? Dark Phoenix is directed by Simon Kinberg, who has been a longtime writer for the X-Men movies, and he's a producer for a lot of the Fox superhero movies.
Yeah, and this movie stars a lot of people. I'm gonna look at my phone real fast because it's like a lot of people. I know James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence. You have Nicholas Holt, Sophie Turner. I guess obviously, Ty Sheridan.
Wait, was Sophie Turner not the top build?
Yeah, she's not the top bill. Is that word? Yeah. Ty Sheridan, Alexandra Shipp, and Evan Peters, and then Cody Smith McPhee, and Jessica Chastain was also in this movie too. I mean, I can name off the other people too.
No, I don't think you have to name off everybody.
I'm gonna name off everybody on this IMDb page. Yeah, so we went to go see this movie today, guys, and I've heard a lot of people talking really bad about this movie. A lot of people have been talking really bad about movies here lately, like Godzilla and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was hoping maybe, maybe I'd walk in here maybe it's not good, but at least maybe be entertaining. But you know what? It wasn't.
Break the table.
It wasn't entertaining.
Yeah, I actually had hope because Godzilla has like a 40% or something like that on Rotten Tomatoes, and this movie had a worse score than that.
Yeah.
It has like a 20%. At one point, it had like a 17%. But I like Godzilla, King of the Monsters,
Which I haven't seen it yet. So
yeah.
I don't really...
I actually loved Godzilla, King of the Monsters, which has a 40%. So I was like, maybe this movie, yeah. But like you said, it definitely turned out complete crap.
Yeah, it's so weird because this movie I feel like shouldn't have been as boring as it was.
Yeah,
this movie bored me to death, man.
Yeah, it was extremely boring. This movie I felt like was just a whole bunch of sequence of scenes that I felt like could have been good and had the idea of the scenes themselves were decent, but they just turned out to be so lame and boring.
Yeah.
This is I feel like I should have been excited for a lot of things that were happening in this movie, and especially the fight scenes were boring too. But just overall, it's just a boring movie.
Yeah, this movie really could have been taken out scenes, been 20 minutes shorter. One of my biggest issues with this movie, well, I don't even know how to say one of my biggest. There's a lot of biggest issues with this movie. But one issue that I have with this movie is the character that played by Jessica Chastain.
Yeah.
It was one of the reasons why it was boring.
Yeah.
Because number one, not only did it drag it out to death,
Right.
but her character was just boring.
Yeah, no, Jessica Chastain is a great actress. I'm not gonna downplay her acting, but her character is just so monotone, and it's obvious why she's that way. But it makes those scenes and all of her people who work for her or whatever it makes those scenes so boring.
Yeah, and believe me, I know the difference between slow and boring. I'm fine with slowness in movies. I'm fine with it, just as long as that slowness is leading up to something.
Right.
But the slowness, here's the thing: the slowness doesn't lead up to anything until the third act. But it's not like it leads up to it.
Right.
It's it's really boring. Then all of a sudden, bam! Something happens and it just escalates extremely quickly.
Yeah, and I was even we went to go see this movie at Alamo Draft House, and they usually bring you the checkout towards when the third act is about to begin, and they started bringing out the checks, and I even turned to Marquez and I was like, is the movie really about to end?
Yeah.
Because it felt like nothing was happening.
Yeah.
Jean Grey, the main character, the Dark Phoenix, she barely does anything in this movie.
Mm.
They play her up to be the most dangerous being, and there's some things that's obvious that she's really powerful, but throughout the movie she barely does anything.
Not to mention that her powers were already shown in X-Men Apocalypse.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense. She obviously already had the Phoenix powers in Apocalypse, and then in this movie she gets them again, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess she lost them, or I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, this movie makes a lot of stuff not make sense. Not only that, this movie completely screws up certain things about the timeline.
Yeah,
and I know,
especially something at the end.
And I know the timeline's a little weird already, but it makes sense.
Right.
The timeline, it makes sense all the way up to X-Men Apocalypse, right?
Yeah, right.
Because all it was it's a little weird, but it pretty much just took out the first 3 X-Men movies.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Well, it took out the first 3 X-Men movies, and then the other 2 X-Men and the other 2 Wolverine movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took out all those movies, but it made sense. you know, and if you whether or not you liked it, you have to admit that it made the timeline made sense. But after this movie, it's like they wanted to make it. It's like they made a movie and just were like, you know what? Let's just make it another movie. Like
Right.
let's not connect it at all to this universe. In fact, let's completely make sure we don't connect to the universe. 'Cause
Right.
it just doesn't make sense with the timeline.
Exactly, and this movie felt extremely rushed. Like it honestly felt like just like two movies that they crammed together, and they didn't know how to tie everything together, and just like it's kind of weird to say because this movie is really boring, but at the same time it felt rushed
Yeah.
with all the information they went through, and it's just like I don't know what they're thinking, especially since. There's a big story of how they went through like huge reshoots. Like this movie was supposed to come out like last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like a year ago, but it got pushed back like 2 or 3 times, and now it's coming out like a year later than it was supposed to.
Yeah.
And one of the main reasons why they did that was because they had to fix the ending because it turned out that the ending that they had was really similar to another Marvel movie that came out, which they didn't say which one, but it was probably either Infinity War or Captain Marvel. But it's supposed to be the ending of the movie is supposed to be in space. So they had to do a whole bunch of reshoots. But what I'm trying to say is they had so much time to fix things,
Yeah.
but then they didn't. It honestly felt like they knew Disney was about to buy Fox,
Yeah.
and this was going to be the last movie that they're making. So they're like, oh, we don't care what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Let's just push something out.
Yeah, and another thing about Jessica Chastain's character is they didn't. Even, I think I kind of said a while ago, but they didn't need to be there at all.
Exactly. Yeah, you take them out, and I honestly felt like it would have been a better movie.
It's
them.
it's also a weird movie because it's hard to look if you see who the villain is of this
Right.
movie. But I don't want to go into explanations or anything like that, and you'll see why if you watch it. But Jessica Chastain's character is obvious, like this person who's trying to kind of push Jean Grey into using her Phoenix powers.
Yeah, for evil.
For evil, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But she's already kind of doing that before Jessica Chastain's character gets
Exactly.
there. You know?
Like there's honestly one scene that's kind of towards the third act where it's pretty obvious why the only reason why Jessica Chastain's character was there, and that's just to give exposition about what the Phoenix powers were and where they came from.
Mm.
And they also kind of made Charles Xavier, his character, kind of a dick in this movie because of how, like, I mean, it's kind of in the trailers, but Jean Grey has a traumatizing experience as a kid, and then he represses memories from that traumatizing experience. So, and completely lies to her throughout her entire childhood about what actually happened. So it's like you kind of have helped her get past that traumatizing experience.
And I do want to say this: the biggest thing I can say about this movie that I liked was the acting, because the acting was really well for most people. But at the same time, it's like everybody had their weird little moments where they didn't know how to say a line.
Right.
You know, like Ty Sheridan had this hilarious line where he's trying to act like really tough. You know?
Like I legit just burst out laughing when he said that.
And you'll know he says like the F word in it. It's like the only F word in the whole movie.
Yeah, it's the place they decided to put the F bomb.
Yeah.
And it's just like the worst possible place.
And it's really weird because those F bombs are usually used for like Wolverine.
Yeah,
movies.
right.
And they're like, let's give it to Ty Sheridan. Like out of all people, we'll give it to Ty Sheridan. The most weird line.
Yeah, which speaking of Wolverine, I actually read pretty recently that the director, I forgot what, Simon Kinberg, the only reason why he didn't have Wolverine in this movie is because he didn't like the age gap between Sophie Turner and Hugh Jackman. But I'm kind of glad they didn't have this movie because it would have completely ruined Hugh Jackman's last appearance as Wolverine.
Yeah, and the dialogue in this movie is really bad. Not there's times whenever it's like just there, and there's times when it's bad.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where there's like 1 or 2 times, maybe 3 times, where someone uses the word no as a comeback.
Right.
They're like kids like have those lines where someone's like you're this or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, the person like no, and it's like whoa man, you got them. You know. And the problem about this movie being so boring, even like with the talking scenes, you know, like whenever people are talking is just boring. Like, really boring. And it's because the dialogue in this movie has no, I mean, I don't know how to say it, has no meat to it, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
It just feels like dialogue to have dialogue.
Yeah,
almost.
just to push the story forward and not in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like, it doesn't give you like any emotional response with the dialogue, and you can tell it's kind of trying to, but not really. And then just the story in this movie, even though it makes sense, it's not really, there's not really much of one, I
Yeah.
guess you can say.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the last thing I would want to kind of bring up is there's one scene. It's like a really quick thing. It's towards the ending when they're in a train, and one of the bad guys is running towards. I forgot which X-Men it was, but he's running towards one of them, and he runs so funny, and I legit burst out laughing.
Yeah, I remember.
I was laughing for like the next like minute of the movie because it's one of the funniest things I've seen in a movie in a while.
Yeah. One thing I was really scared about, because I think I'd heard this somewhere, that Stan Lee had filmed a cameo in this movie. And this is a spoiler real quick. Not really a spoiler, but kind of. He's not in this movie.
Yeah, so that ease your mind.
I want to say that. Thank God he does not have a spoiler in this movie. And oh my God, can you imagine this movie being his last cameo in a Marvel movie?
Jeez.
Oh my goodness, man. I'm so glad his last cameo was Endgame. Endgame, I know people have issues with it. I love Endgame.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, but this movie was garbage. And I will say, there's not really that much to like in this movie other than the acting maybe. And to be honest, I've never really liked Sophie Turner as an actress in these movies. I haven't seen her in anything else like Game of Thrones. So, but in these movies, I never liked her as a character, Jean Grey. Her acting was always weird, kind of stale. The acting is the only thing that shines in this movie, especially from James McAvoy. James McAvoy is a phenomenal actor.
Even though he's somehow supposed to turn from James McAvoy to Patrick Stewart in 8 years.
Oh yeah, exactly.
This
Yeah,
movie takes place in 1992.
yeah. This movie takes place in 1992. Then the one with Patrick Stewart, the first X-Men, takes place in 2000. So in 8 years, we're supposed to believe that James McAvoy turns into Patrick Stewart.
And then Michael Fassbender turns into Ian McKellen.
Michael Fassbender. I didn't even think about that. Michael Fassbender looks like Ian McKellen in 8 years. In 8 more years, Michael Fassbender is going to look like Ian McKellen.
You think they'd age the characters a little bit with makeup,
Yeah,
but, you know.
yeah. I mean,
oh well.
Yeah,
That's the least of the issues with this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of things that don't really make sense about this movie. I don't know. So it's a really bad movie. I'm sorry. I am sorry, guys. It's so bad. How this is the last X movie coming out from Fox.
I mean, there's
starting off with a
New
pretty
Mutants, but I mean, it's technically going to be released by Disney.
Yeah, and it started off with a pretty decent franchise. But
Yeah.
whatever. I guess we don't get all the great things, So whatever. Well, guys, overall this movie was garbage. I don't really like anything about it other than the fact that the acting was good for most people overall, except for like a few weird little lines that were just bad. The dialogue was trash in this movie. Even like the dialogue that wasn't cringy, it was just bad and boring. This movie is just boring overall. Until like I said earlier, until like the last like third of this movie. But the last third of this movie comes out of nowhere. It's like there's no build up to it. It's just like really boring. And then there's this one scene that has this huge escalation. I don't know,
Right.
it's like huge. Like this is where the scene goes, and then like a second later, it's like up here, out of nowhere. It's just
kind of physically. Too.
yeah. It's almost like they just like I'm pretty sure it's where the refilm.
Oh yeah, the
the
reshoots.
reshoots came from. Is that last third? Because the last third was boom, like out of nowhere. But this is a really boring movie. What we're gonna do?
Yeah, there's not really much I can say in the summary because there's so many things that were wrong with it. Just the overall, it was boring. I was hoping for it to at least be decent. And towards the beginning, I had kind of a little bit of hope, but then it was like pretty crushed pretty immediately, and it just turned into a pretty boring movie. Nothing really happens, and also the public perception of Jean Grey doesn't really make any sense because at the beginning of the movie they were praising the X-Men like so hardcore, and then like all of a sudden when she does a few minor bad things, they hate all X-Men
Oh, yeah.
and all mutants like all of a sudden, and that part doesn't really make that much sense. So overall, it was just a really bad movie.
We are gonna say that Dark Phoenix is 25% awesome. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, you can like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I said this all in the wrong order because it's going to be all... I'm going to say some things a second time now because I said it all out of order. If you want to, you can comment and let us know what you thought about what you thought about this video. If you disagreed or agreed, let us know what you thought about this new X-Men movie. Maybe rank all the X-Men movies, or maybe just rank these new X-Men movies from first class to now. Whatever you want to do, just let us know.
And don't forget to follow us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at 2 Awesome Men.
And as always, thank you so much for watching, and you will see us later.